Hello, welcome back to Chapter 4, Part C. Need a little incense tonight, huh? Okay. Trying to remember where I stopped. Okay. Tell him it's part of being a 100% American boy. The next morning, after doing my share of the morning chores, I went to the marshal's office. Uncle Mark wasn't there, but there was a prisoner in one of the cells. It was Mr. Haggerty, who got drunk every couple of weeks and disturbed the peace so much that Uncle Mark had to lock him up until he was sober. He was sitting on the bunk of his cell, holding his head in his hands. Since it was my duty as a reporter to interview all prisoners, I walked to the door of the cell. "Mr. Haggerty, why do you get drunk?" I asked. He raised his head and looked at me with bloodshot eyes. "It's that wife of mine, Sonny," he said. "She nags and nags at me until I have to get drunk or go out of my mind." I figured this was news because nobody but me and Mr. Haggerty knew why he got drunk. I made a note of it in my reporter's notebook. You see where this is going? This is like a train wreck. I'm going to pass out whenever this all comes together. You'll watch me get excited. All right. Friday afternoon, right after lunch, all the reporters arrived at our barn to turn in their reports. Tom sat behind his desk with his green eye shade over his eyes. He had a pencil in his hand and a big notebook on his desk. He asked me to report first. I told him what Mr. Haggerty had told me. "Very good, J.D.," Tom said as he wrote in his notebook. "That is news. I've often wondered why he got drunk." One by one, Sammy, Seth, Danny, and Jimmy made their reports. All of them had one or more items that Tom considered newsworthy enough to write in his notebook. "You're next, Basil," he said. I wait until other reporters leave," Basil said. "Same reporter," Sammy said with a sneer. "Oh, I'm sorry. Some reporter," Sammy said with a sneer. "He didn't get any news." Tom had an excited look on his face as he ordered the other reporters to leave. When all of them had left the barn, he looked at Basil. "You found something out about the robbery?" he asked with excitement. "I know who robbed the bank." "Oh, I'm sorry. I said it wrong. Sorry." "I know who robbed the bank," Basil said proudly. "I know what to say in front of other reporters. Afraid maybe they'll tell before Bugle is published." "Wow!" Tom shouted. "What a story!" Then he gripped his pencil. "Let's have it, Basil." Basil told us that he was pretty downhearted by Thursday evening because he hadn't heard anything from customers at the cafe that sounded like news. He asked his father if he could stay up hiding behind the counter until the cafe closed at 9 o'clock. At first his father said no, but when Basil explained that he would lose his job as a reporter on the Bugle if he didn't get some news, his father agreed. At 8:30, 2 customers entered the cafe for a late supper. They sat down at the table and ordered steak smothered in onions and hash browns, apple pie, and coffee. Mr. Kokovinis went to the kitchen to prepare the meal. Basil's mother was in the apartment where they lived above the cafe. Excuse me. Oh yeah, that's just thoughts for later. Thoughts for later on when I do Evening with Granny. We're going to get that show together one of these days. All right. Basil took a chance and peeked around the corner of the counter. He recognized Hank Williams, who had been working at the livery stable since coming into town about 3 months ago. He was a regular customer at the cafe. The other man was Frank Jackson, who had also been a regular customer at the cafe since coming into town a couple of weeks ago. His father had told him that Jackson was a gambler. Basil was about to give up when he heard the men begin to quarrel about the robbery. "I say, let's take the loot and blow town," Jackson said. "Keep your voice down," Williams said. "The Greek is in the kitchen and can't hear us," Jackson said. "We made a bargain when I sent for you," Williams said. "If we pull out right away, the marshal will put 2 and 2 together and be right on our trail with a posse. But if we just stick it out for a month and then pull out, it won't attract any suspicion. We pulled off the perfect robbery. And if we just stick to our bargain, we can never be arrested for it." "Guess you're right," Jackson said. "But are you sure nobody will find that vase in the livery stable?" "I got it so well hidden under some hay," William said. Basil remained behind the counter until the men had eaten and left the cafe. "Did you tell your father?" Tom asked as Basil finished his story. "No," Basil answered. "Afraid Papa will tell the marshal." I was so excited I was trembling. "I'll go get Uncle Mark," I shouted. "You will do no such thing," Tom said. "And you will give me your words you won't breathe a word of this to anybody." "But you must tell Uncle Mark," I said. "We'll tell him, but not until just before the first edition of the Bugle hits the streets tomorrow," Tom said. He dropped his pencil on the desk and began rubbing his hands. "Boy, I'm going to scoop Papa's paper. Oh, he'll wish he never said I was too young to help him at the Advocate. I'll start setting type for the first edition of the Bugle right now. You will have to you will have to do my chores this afternoon." "Why should I?" I asked. "Because I can set type and you can't. And we've got a newspaper to get out," Tom answered. Then he looked at Basil. "You've done a great job reporting," he said. "I will see you get full credit for it in the Bugle. Now, go tell all the other reporters. I want them here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. But don't mention anything about the robbery being solved." I not only got stuck doing Tom's chores and mine that afternoon, but also the next morning. Tom said he found some typographical errors in the type and he had set and wanted to correct them. I can't slug the type. Hold on, again, thirsty. Oh. "I can't slug the type to make the columns come out even," he told me right after breakfast, "because I haven't got enough experience yet. But I can make sure there are no typographical errors." All the reporters arrived at 9 o'clock just as I finished the chores. We all went into the barn. Tom had 2 pairs of old scissors Mama had given him. He put Sammy and Danny to work cutting up newsprint 7.5 inches by 10 inches. We had to wait until they had 100 sheets cut. "We're ready to roll 'em, men. I'll turn the wheel of the press and the ink make ready. Oh, and ink the make ready. You know what? We haven't had this technology in like 100 years, so excuse me if I don't know what it is. old-fashioned newspaper printing was like mimeograph. Oh my gosh, you don't know what mimeographs are either, but it's and every time you rolled it over, it first off it rolled into the ink, and it rolled over your press, and it pressed it down, and that's how you got your ditto copies and your newspapers. Just FYI. Okay. JD, you feed the sheets into the press. Basil, you pull out the printed copies, and the rest of you lay the printed copies on bales of hay and around the barns so the ink can dry. And that's true. As the first copy of the Bugle came off the press, Basil handed it to Sammy, and I heard Sammy yell, "Holy Toledo! We solved the bank robbery!" It was just like Sammy to take some of the credit and make such a commotion. We had to stop the press while we all crowded around the bale of hay where the first copy lay drying. I couldn't help swelling up with pride as I read the one-page first edition of the Bugle. The Aidenville Bugle. Read it first in the Bugle. T.D. Fitzgerald, editor and publisher. Volume 1. Price, 1 cent. The Bugle solves bank robbery. Acting upon information furnished by the Bugle, Marshal Mark Tranter arrested Hank Williams and Frank Jackson for the robbery of the Aidenville Bank just a few minutes before this first edition of the Bugle was released to the public. All of the stolen money was recovered from under the... Hold on. This is exciting, but I think... He's lying. I don't know. Hold on. All of the money was recovered from under some hay in the livery stable where Williams has worked for about 3 months since coming to town. Local news of interest. If Mrs. Haggerty would stop nagging her husband all the time, he will stop getting drunk. Sarah Pickens is going to die an old maid because she is too stuck up and choosy to marry a local man who loves her. The Winters dog, Bess, had pups. Anybody wanting a pup to see Mr. or Mrs. Williams? Robert Bates got stung on the horse he bought from Steve Andrews because the horse is windbroken. I don't know what that means either. If the robbery was solved... Hold on. How am I messing this up? Grandma forgot how to read a newspaper. I'm like, what? Back it up. All the stolen money was recovered from under some hay in the livery stable where Williams has worked on it about 3 months since coming into town. The robbery was solved by the great detective work of Basil Kokovinis, a Bugle reporter, and the great brain of the editor and publisher of this newspaper. The great brain of the editor and publisher of this newspaper. The editor and publisher of the Bugle deduced that the robbers were from the east side of the railroad tracks and must eat some of their meals at the Palace Cafe. He assigned his reporter to hide behind the counter in the cafe and listen for anything suspicious customers might say. At 8:30 Thursday evening, Williams and Jackson entered the cafe to eat supper. They placed their order with Mr. Kokovinis, the proprietor, who went into the kitchen to prepare the meal. Then the two robbers began to quarrel about the robbery, with Jackson wanting to take the loot and leave town at once, and Williams insisting they stay in town for a month before leaving so as to not attract any suspicion to them. The Bugle reporter, hidden behind the counter, heard every word. The citizens of Aidenville can thank the Bugle for solving what would have otherwise been a perfect crime. And remember, you always read it first in the Bugle. Then, local news of interest. If Mrs. Haggerty would stop nagging her husband all the time, he would stop drinking. Getting drunk. Sarah Pickens is going to die an old maid because she's too stuck up and choosy to marry a local man who loves her. The Winters dog Bess has had puppies. Anybody wanting a pup, see Mr. and Mrs. Winters. Robert Bates got stung on the horse he bought from Steve Andrews because the horse is windbroken. If the widow Rankin spent as much money on her kids as she does on herself to catch a new husband, her kids wouldn't look like ragamuffins. Mrs. Lee's brother, Stanley, isn't in the army, like she tells people. He's serving time in the state penitentiary. Anybody wanting a kitten, please see Mrs. Carter Dan Thomas. Anybody wanting a kitten, please see Mrs. Carter. Dan Thomas had better find a job soon, or his brother-in-law, Mr. Forrester, is going to throw Dan out on his ear. Kids in town made a deal with Mr. Smith. They are going to keep all the weeds cleared from the Smith vacant lot in return for using it as a playground. Editorial. Some parents don't seem to realize that their kids are growing up and continue to treat them like little kids. When a boy gets to be 11 going on 12, his parents should start treating him like a young man and not like a kid anymore. If Mrs. Haggerty would just stop nagging. Oh my God, what do you think is going to happen? Oh, what do you think is going to happen? Sarah Pickens is just too stuck up. Oh, he's going to get treated like an adult, I'll tell you what. Woo! Woo! He's in trouble. Okay, here we go. All the reporters were as excited as all get out after reading the first edition of the Bugle and anxious to start selling it. But we had to wait until we printed the rest of the 100 copies and then wait for them to dry. Then Tom handed me a copy. Hey, you and Basil take this to Uncle Mark, he said, and stay with him until he has the bank robbers in jail. Then let me know so I can turn my other orders loose on selling the Bugle to the public. Basil and I ran to the marshal's office. Uncle Mark was sitting in his swivel chair. I thrust a copy of the Bugle in his hands. Uncle Mark jumped to his feet while still reading. Tom wants you to make the arrest quietly so nobody knows until they read it in the Bugle, I said. Will do, Uncle Mark said with a grin. Then he looked at Basil. Thanks, Basil, and be sure you thank Tom for me, and I'll take Hank Williams first. As reporters, I said, we've got to see the arrests. All right, boys, but just act natural. Follow me to the livery stable. I'll go in front, but bring Williams out the back way. Basil and I were in the alley behind the livery stable when Uncle Mark came out the back way with Hank Williams and carrying a leather valise. He walked Williams up the alleys as if they were just taking a friendly walk and got the man locked up in a cell without anybody noticing. Then Uncle Mark opened the valise and took the money before he locked it up in his roll-top desk. I've got you cold, Hank, he said to the prisoner. Take my advice and confess and plead guilty, and it'll go easier for you. What can I do but confess and plead guilty?" Williams said sadly. "You knew where the loot was hidden and everything. Jackson must have told you." Then he got a startled look on his face. "Where is Frank?" "On my way to arrest him now," Uncle Mark said. Basil and I followed Uncle Mark to the Sheepman's Hotel. Jackson must have been in bed because it seemed like a long time before Uncle Mark came out the rear of the hotel with the prisoner. Basil and I walked close enough to hear as Uncle Mark walked Jackson up the alley. "You might as well confess and plead guilty," Uncle Mark said. "I've got Hank Williams locked up and the money from the robbery. Hank confessed and is going to plead guilty." Jackson shrugged. "Well, if that's the case, what else can I do?" he said. Basil and I followed all the way up the alleys and to the jailhouse without anybody noticing anything. Uncle Mark locked Jackson into the cell next to Williams. Then he looked at Basil and me. "You can go tell Tom, and he can start selling his newspaper now," he said. Basil ran out of the jail, but I stayed. "You squealer!" Jackson shouted at Williams. "I didn't squeal," Williams said. "I thought you did." "I sure didn't," Jackson said. Hank Williams pushed his face between the bars of his cell. "How did you ever figure it, Marshal?" he pleaded. "I didn't," Uncle Mark said as he took the copy of the Bugle from his pocket and handed it to Williams. "The boy, who is the editor and publisher of this newspaper, and his reporter, solved the robbery." I never in my life saw such a flabbergasted look on a robber's face as Williams as he read the story in the Bugle. "I wouldn't have minded so much, Marshal," he said, as if he wanted to cry, "if it had been you. But a couple of kids. Boys at the state pen will ride Frank and me plenty for this." "What's going on?" Jackson hollered from his cell. "Don't tell him, Marshal," Williams pleaded. "It'll make him cry." Uncle Mark passed the copy of the Bugle to Jackson. Then we heard a whole lot of commotion in the street. I ran outside with Uncle Mark. I could see our reporters waving copies of the Bugle in the air at every corner on Main Street. I could hear them shouting, "Bank robbery solved! Read all about it in the Bugle! Penny copy!" Oh boy! Oh! And they were doing they were doing land office businesses. Land office business? They were doing a land office, it must be an old saying. Oh, this one's could be long. Let me see. Are we done yet? We have 3 more. Whew, I can't imagine. Can't freaking imagine. Okay, we're gonna try to finish it. This one's just gonna have to be long. It'll make up for bang near passing out yesterday, huh? Because 3 pages is not enough to stop it and make a part D. Alright. People were running out of stores and out of their homes, buying out copies of the Bugle like I'd never seen anybody buy anything in my life. But it was strange how people standing on Main Street reading the Bugle were acting. Some of them were men slapping each other on the back. Some of the men and women were reading and just staring as if they couldn't believe the robbery had been solved. Some were laughing, while others looked positively angry. I felt Uncle Mark's hand on my shoulder. "I'd better take the stolen money back to the bank now," he said. I ran back to the barn to tell Tom that the first edition of the Bugle was a big success. I found my brother sitting behind his desk with his green eye shade pushed up on his forehead and his thumbs hooked under his armpits. "You did it, Dee!" I shouted. "People are buying the Bugle like they've never bought the Advocate. You proved to Papa that you're old enough and smart enough to be a journalist." Tom nodded modestly. "Well, Papa's often told us about the wars between rival newspapers in Utah," he said. "If he doesn't give me a job, On the Advocate now, it'll be war between the Bugle and the Advocate, and I'll scoop 'em every week. Just then Danny, Tommy, and Jimmy come running into the barn. They told Tom they were sold out. "We'll print another 100 copies," Tom said. "JD, you run down to the Advocate office and tell Papa I'll need some more newsprint." Woo! Woo! I ran all the way to the Advocate office, but didn't go inside because I couldn't. There was a big crowd on the wooden sidewalk and in the street in front of the office. Papa was standing in the doorway, looking as if he wished he was on a deserted island. He was holding a copy of the Bugle in his hand. I couldn't blame Papa for the way he looked. Tom had really scooped him good. And you never saw such a commotion. Mrs. Haggerty was shouting insults at Papa. Sarah Pickens was crying. Mrs. Lee was hysterical, with two other women trying to quiet her down. The widow Rankin was screaming, and she was going to sue Papa. Mr. Bates and Steve Andrews were fighting. Danny's father, Mr. Forrester, and his brother-in-law, Dan Thomas, were taking off their coats and getting ready to fight. The rest of the crowd were laughing like it was all a big joke. Then Uncle Mark, who must have returned from the bank where he had taken the stolen money, pushed his way through the crowd to Papa's side. He took out his Colt .45 and fired a couple shots in the air. Uh-oh. Public safety announcement. What goes up must come down. Never shoot rounds into the open air. Thank you very much. Everybody shut up! And fired a couple shots in the open and stared at him. You men, stop fighting and arguing, and you women, stop all that shouting and crying, or I'll throw you all in jail for disturbing the peace, Uncle Mark said. Everybody in town knew Uncle Mark never made idle threats. The fighting stopped, and there was complete silence. If any of you have complaints to make, Uncle Mark said, you will act like law-abiding citizens and come to my office and sign a complaint. If you think you have grounds for a liable suit, you will consult your attorney and act on his advice. I will not tolerate a mob. Now break up this crowd and go about your business. Just a moment, Papa said. I have something I would like to say. I cannot condone what my son has done, and assure you, who are concerned, that he will be severely punished. But the fact remains that he and Basil Kokovinis did solve the bank robbery. And if it had not been for these two boys, many of you who are depositors at the bank would have lost your money. That made the crowd think, as they began to nod their heads. Then Papa held up a copy of the Bugle. As for the local news column, he said, none of it is really news, except for the pups in the Winters family. Have to give away, and the kittens at the Carters have to give away. And the item about the boys clearing the weeds from Swift's vacant lot has nothing else. And the item about the boys clearing the vacant lot. Nothing else in this local news column is news because they are things that people in this town have known about for some time. All my son has done is bring it out into the open what has been said over backyard fences. I admit it was a cruel thing to do, and in very bad taste, but he is only a boy, and didn't know any better. I apologize to each of you for what he has done, and I will make him apologize to each of you. Thank you for listening to me. The crowd broke up, but Papa looked to be as angry as a burro with a cockle-burl under his pack-saddle. He walked so swiftly toward our house that I had to run to keep up with him. He didn't slow down or stop until he reached our barn, where Tom and the reporters were waiting. "Where's the newsprint?" Tom asked, as if surprised. "I'll newsprint you," Papa said. And I thought from the way he said it that Tom was due for the first whipping of his life. Woo! And Papa sort of swallowed a couple of times. "Ask your friends to leave." All the reporters left except me. Tom leaned back on his nail-kegged chair and pushed his green eye shade up on his forehead. "What's the idea?" he asked, curious, as if curious and not scared at all. Papa's face turned red, and his cheeks puffed up like a squirrel with a jaw full of nuts. He sat down on a bale of hay. Finally, he spoke. "You have caused your mother and me more anguish and embarrassment in one day than all the kids in town put together could cause their parents in a year," Papa said. To my astonishment, Tom grinned. "Are you sure you're just not upset because I scooped the Advocate, Papa?" he asked. Solving the bank robbery was good journalism, Papa admitted. You and Basil did the community, and especially the depositors at the bank, a great service. Tom nodded wisely. "Guess that proves I'm old enough to learn how to run the Washington Press and help you set the Advocate," he said. "I haven't finished yet," Papa said. "Your local news column, except for 3 items, isn't news fit to print. In the first place, it wasn't news at all, because every adult in town already knew about the Haggertys, Sarah Pickens, Mrs. Lee's brother, and all the rest of it. And in the second place, it was a type of journalism that feeds on scandal. It hurts people, and is in very bad taste." Papa paused for a moment to let that sink in. "A good journalist does not deliberately hurt people just to sell newspapers," he said. "It is true, a good newspaperman seeks to expose evil when that evil is a threat to the community. If a public official is corrupt, it is the duty of the newspaper editor to expose that official as being corrupt, because the newspaper is thereby performing a good service for the community. But when you print that Mrs. Haggerty's nagging drives her husband to drink, and all that other scandal in your local news column, that is an invasion of their privacy, and subject to libel laws. Moreover, it performs no useful service for the community. Your mother and I do quarrel on occasions, as you are well aware. It is part of married life. But how would you like it if everybody printed in a newspaper that your mother and I were fighting like cats and dogs all the time?" I'd never seen Tom's face so dejected as he bit his lower lip. "I was only trying to prove to you that I wasn't a kid anymore," he said in a whisper. "I didn't mean to hurt anybody." "I got the message in your editorial," Papa said. "But the only thing you proved to me was that you are too young to do anything for me at the Advocate, except deliver it." Then Papa stood up. "You have done a terrible thing, and must be punished for it," he said. You will never have the opportunity to publish another edition of the Bugle. I am going to have the ramage pressed and type crated, taken back to the Advocate office. That will only be part of your punishment. You will do your chores without any allowance for the next 4 weeks, and your mother and I will impose a silent treatment for the same period of time. And tomorrow, you will go around and personally apologize to everybody slandered in the Bugle. Well, I sure felt sorry for Tom, but I guess I must have looked sort of relieved because I wasn't included in the punishment. Wipe that smirk off your face, J.D., Papa said. For your part in this, you were also included in the silent treatment. But Papa! I started to protest. I was an innocent victim, but he just walked out of the barn. Silent treatment had begun. I looked at Tom. Your great brain sure got us in a mess this time, I said, putting the blame where I felt it belonged. Beat it, J.D., he said. I want to be alone. I left the barn and shut the door. I walked part way across our corral and then sneaked back and peeked into the barn through a keyhole. I couldn't believe my eyes. Tom sat at his desk with his head cradled in his arms and his shoulders were shaking. Even outside the barn I could hear muffled sobs coming from his throat. The great brain was crying. I couldn't ever remember seeing him cry before. Even when he fell one time while we were playing Follow the Leader and he had broken his arm, he didn't cry. Okay, that does it for this chapter. I'll see you when I see you. Have a good night.